Good morning, everybody. This is Jim Thornton, Mayor of the City of LaGrange. I am in City Council chambers in downtown LaGrange, coming to you live. I'm being joined this morning for the third Facebook Town Hall virtual roundtable discussion. You can watch this Facebook forum on the LaGrange LGTV Facebook page, which is LGTV.org. So the website would be facebook.com/lgtv.org, or you can watch it on the City of LaGrange Facebook page, or you can go to the city's website, which is lgtv.org/home/LaGrange TV. At this time, I am delighted to say that we also are being joined by Mayor Bill Stankiewicz in Hogansville. He is joining us at the Hogansville City Council chambers. We have Mayor Steve Trammell in West Point, and he is joining us at the West Point City Council chambers. And we have Chairman Patrick Cruz, and he is joining us from his office. Let me tell you the purpose of this town hall session. So the purpose of today's town hall session is for the three cities and the county to talk about our ordinances. So as many of you know, in the past week, the three cities, as well as Troup County, have all adopted or amended emergency ordinances. And as a result of that, new rules and new regulations have been put into place. Those regulations are slightly different, although they are for the most part consistent. I think it's important for our residents to know that the three cities and the county have been coordinating on all of these efforts. So we have been coordinating to make sure that the rules we were putting in place would be consistent. However, we also are different cities, and we have also the county. And so one of the things that allows for is local control and local flexibility, which means we don't have to all do the same thing. If some of you were able to watch Governor Kemp's town hall meeting last night, Governor Kemp talked about that. He talked about the fact that, yes, he as governor could impose a statewide rule that would apply across the board through the entire state. But he also recognized that we are a big, diverse state. And as he mentioned, there are 50 counties, about a third of our counties, that don't even have a single case of coronavirus. Yet we have three areas that would be considered hot spots, if you will, disproportionately high numbers. Those would be Albany, Cartersville, and Carrollton. So there's a lot of variety and variation across the state. That gives local governments the opportunity to respond as they need to on their individual local level. I'm going to see at this point if we can get a word of greeting and comment from Mayor Bill Stankiewicz in Hogansville.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, and we appreciate your taking time out of your day to tune in. I think that this is a critical time for us, and we have an opportunity to work together as a community to defeat this virus. And I think the actions that we will take will go a long way to accomplish that goal. And the cooperation so far from our citizens has been outstanding, and we look forward to continued cooperation. And again, good morning.
Okay, great. Well, let's go down to Steve Trammell down in West Point.
And make sure you can hear me, Jim. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. I want to echo what Bill said and bring greetings from the city of West Point. Thank you all for letting us do this today. I understand there's problems with all technology like this, but I'm very glad that we could all keep our social distance and be together this morning like this, and I look forward to hearing and answering the questions we have about this crisis. So thank you all for being here.
As I mentioned, we have a little bit of local variation in the ordinances that the various cities have adopted. The city of LaGrange's ordinance, as well as all of our ordinances, took as their base a model ordinance that was produced by the Georgia Municipal Association that was attempting to reflect best practices across the state, but allowed for local variation and local adaptation. In LaGrange, We basically did most of the things that were recommended. We required all of our restaurants to close their dining rooms and to just go to drive-through and carry-out. We provided a certain specific businesses that would be that we felt like would be high risk for coronavirus transmission to close. We followed the exact list that GMA provided statewide. We also adopted a ban on public gatherings of 10 people or more. We, of course, have closed all of our city parks and other public facilities, but this ban on gatherings does apply to both public and private gatherings. And we also adopted a provision that would require our succession planning in the event of an emergency. However, we did not impose a citywide curfew. That was a decision made by the LaGrange City Council. So I'd like to turn now to Hogansville Mayor Bill Stankiewicz and talk about what they did in their city and how it varies a little bit from what we did in LaGrange.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, and we appreciate your taking time out of your day to tune in. I think that this is a critical time for us, and we have an opportunity to work together as a community to defeat this virus. And I think the actions that we will take will go a long way to accomplish that goal. And the cooperation so far from our citizens has been outstanding, and we look forward to continued cooperation. And again, good morning.
Okay, great. Well, let's go down to Steve Trammell down in West Point.
And make sure you can hear me, Jim. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. I want to echo what Bill said and bring greetings from the city of West Point. Thank you all for letting us do this today. I understand there's problems with all technology like this, but I'm very glad that we could all keep our social distance and be together this morning like this, and I look forward to hearing and answering the questions we have about this crisis. So thank you all for being here.
Okay. And do we have Chairman Cruz? Okay. We have left. We have temporary. Are you back, Chairman? We have no audio with Chairman Cruz. No audio. So we will. Chairman, we'll come back to you in a minute. And at this time, as I mentioned, we have a little bit of local variation in the ordinances that the various cities have adopted. The city of LaGrange's ordinance, as well as all of our ordinances, took as their base a model ordinance that was produced by the Georgia Municipal Association that was attempting to reflect best practices across the state, but allowed for local variation and local adaptation. In LaGrange, we basically did most of the things that were recommended. We required all of our restaurants to close their dining rooms and to just go to drive-through and carry-out. We provided a certain specific businesses that would be that we felt like would be high risk for coronavirus transmission to close. We followed the exact list that GMA provided statewide. We also adopted a ban on public gatherings of 10 people or more. We, of course, have closed all of our city parks and other public facilities, but this ban on gatherings does apply to both public and private gatherings. And we also adopted a provision that would require our succession planning in the event of an emergency. However, we did not impose a citywide curfew. That was a decision made by the LaGrange City Council. So I'd like to turn now to Hogansville Mayor Bill Stankiewicz and talk about what they did in their city and how it varies a little bit from what we did in LaGrange.
Thanks, Jim. We did much the same. Again, we followed the GMA model ordinance, and we enacted almost exactly what the city of LaGrange did, with the possible exception, or not the possible, but the exception. The council decided not to close restaurants, not to close the dining in portion of restaurants. However, as time has gone by, all of our restaurants, save one, have closed their dining in facility. So maybe the court of public opinion prevailed. But at this point, we only have one restaurant that still has dining in, and that was the will of our council. And we'll see how that goes. I suspect that so we'll see some additional changes in our restaurants, but that's pretty much it. We passed the same ordinance basically, except for that one exception, as the city of LaGrange. We failed to pass a curfew, and that was based on consultation with our public safety officials, who felt that enforcement would be a major issue for them in this time of crisis, and so they did not want to pass a curfew.
Do you think, Bill, that you will take any of those issues up or expand anything in your ordinance anytime soon? Do you have any plans to do so?
Yes, we're having an emergency meeting of City Council this morning and at 11:30, and we're going to address a couple of issues that were overlooked in the original original ordinance.
That's breaking news, right? I mean, the Hogansville is having an emergency meeting of their council today, Friday, March 27th at 11:30 in council chambers.
Yeah, we're going to do it not in council chambers. We're doing it telephonically to keep our social distancing. That's
very, very good. Thank you for clarifying that. So, yeah, we're all living into this new social distancing world, and it's not always easy, and it's old habits like mine are hard to break. But thank you for that. Let's go to Mayor Trammell down in West Point, who may have the best backdrop of any of us, because he's I'm looking behind him and I'm seeing a bright blue sky, the sun rising over the Chattahoochee River. I always think about sunrises, and sunrise is the beginning of a new day, new life beginning. I hope that's a great hopeful sign for the future for West Point and all of us. So, Steve, anything you could say about your ordinance?
Absolutely. A new day in West Point, I hope. In West Point, we enacted, of course, the same as Hogansville and LaGrange, the no dining in of the restaurants. Everything, all the ordinances are the same due to the fact that we use that GMA model. We did enact the curfew from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. The curfew in West Point, I feel like I can speak for the council. We're all concerned about our police department and the amount of work that they have to do, especially in this time of crisis, and maintaining the social distance. And we have got to keep our fire, our EMS well. We don't have a very large force. And so every one of our police officers, every one of our firemen, EMS, it's very important to us, very critical to us maintaining services. So at night, from 10 to 5, it's even more difficult to maintain social distance and just to keep yourself safe at night. So I was very happy to see our whole council was in one accord. We voted unanimously to pass the curfew. Now, with that stated, our police officers are not going to be out there with a paddy wagon picking people up and taking them to jail. We're going to enforce the curfew. If you're driving to work, if you're driving through town, you're not going to be affected. If you're congregating in a group at 3 a.m. in the morning, we're going to address that, though. And people need to know that. That's not the thing to be doing right now. So I think it's a good ordinance for the city of West Point. It may have not fit the other cities, but it certainly works well for us. And I think our community is going to come together, and we all understand the need to lighten the load on our police force. So that was the main reason for that one.
One question for both Mayor Trammell and Stankiewicz that I get asked a lot is about the expiration date, and I know that what we have done is we actually declared an emergency in LaGrange on March 17th, and when we declared that emergency, that declaration was good for 60 days. because our our city charter, won't let us declare an emergency forever, obviously. There has to be an expiration date on it. Has to be no more than 2 months. So we declared the expiration date of 60 days, meaning that our ordinance will expire on its own terms May 16th. Therefore, the rules that we put into place both on March 17th and then revised on March 24th will continue for that original 60-day period, expiring in the middle of May. However, as we've said repeatedly, the City Council can lift those restrictions at any time during that 2 months, and will lift them the minute we see that we have control over this virus. We could also renew it if we get to the end of that period of time and we haven't gotten control of the virus. The council could declare a new emergency and create another 60-day ordinance. Obviously, we hope we don't have to do that. We want to lift it early. But I wanted to just see if, because I get that question a lot, I wondered, Bill and Steve, if y'all could speak to what the terms are for your particular cities.
Very similar to what you said, Jim. Our charter limits a declaration of emergency to 60 days, and we felt that, on the advice of our city attorney, we felt that to declare the emergency for the full 60 days, it would be easier to lift the emergency if the situation changes than it would be to reimpose it. So, as similar to what the action that LaGrange took, we enacted a 60-day emergency declaration. We hope to lift it early. We hope that we won't have to reimpose it at the end of 60 days. But I think that those decisions will be based on the situation on the ground at that time. I think we have to let the science prevail and direct us as to what actions we take, and we won't know that until the time comes, and so that's our position.
And ours is exactly the same, except we expire on May the 20th. But 60 days for our ordinance, same kind of thing. If we need to extend it, we will. Hopefully we don't need to.
That's great. Well, let's. I think we've gotten the connection back with Chairman Cruz, and so I'm going to turn to him and let him share what's on his mind this morning, and any of these. Hope you've heard some of our discussion about the differences in our ordinances and so forth, and maybe you could address that from the county's perspective.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, and certainly glad to get the audio part fixed this morning. Let me say good morning to each of you, and again, thank you to the City of LaGrange for hosting us. Yes, as was mentioned by several of you, I mean, the ordinance that most of us followed was the one that was proposed by GMA. So the provisions are basically the same as most of you, except that ours does not include a curfew. We decided in the unincorporated area that a curfew was probably not a big issue with us, but the cancellation of in-dining option, certain businesses, and asking for any gathering over 10 or group, they must be able to practice the social distancing. So I think that, as the mayor pointed out, one of the number one questions we had was, well, why was ours a different time? And as the mayor of Hogansville, as Mr. Mayor Beal said, we debated doing it 2 weeks and then renewing it, but it's just much easier in our government, we felt, to go ahead and do the 60 days, which is, I think, only 1 day difference from expiration in the city of LaGrange. But certainly we want our citizens to understand that it behooves us as community leaders to lift this ban just as soon as we get a clearance from our medical and our other leadership. So I want to ensure you that we want to be doing business in Troup County, and that includes all of our 3 cities. So we will be working with our other mayors, our school system, and others to make sure that we take the appropriate action at the time that it's needed. I think one of the other questions we hear a lot is why were certain businesses chosen over others, and why were factories allowed to continue. But it becomes very difficult to decide what businesses maybe are essential and which ones need to close. And I've had that discussion even within my own family. And so the recommendation was that if you have more than 10 people, then you need to be able to ensure that the 6-foot rule can be maintained. And certain businesses cannot do that. A dentist, for example, cannot examine your teeth and be further than 6 feet away from you. It's hard for a hairdresser to cut your hair and be more than 6 feet away. So it was very difficult and very painful. And please understand that each of us as community leaders, we feel your pain. We know it's bad, but we're trying to make the right decisions for all of the people within our community. And I want to just take a moment to publicly thank Bill for his efforts in Hogansville. I know he tried very hard to make sure that the in-dining option was taken from the very beginning, but I know that there was great concern among his council. But I want to take also just a moment to say this battle's personal for me. I've got 2 children that's on the front line here in this county fighting this. And as I've said before, all of us as citizens must appreciate the efforts of our medical community. If our medical community is overrun by a number of cases, people infected, going to the emergency room, going to the hospital, if our medical community is overrun, we could lose this war. And I think out of respect to those people that are fighting this, whether it's the medical or all of our first responders, they have fears about going into these situations. I think out of respect to them, we as all citizens must be willing to make some sacrifices. And I know it's tough, but that's what makes us great. So anyway, thank you, Bill, and I am certainly glad to hear that today you'll have another emergency meeting, and hopefully some of those measures will be cleared up. So thank you very much.
Bill, do you have a comment there?
Yeah, I just would like to echo what Patrick said, that these are not easy decisions for any of us. And it is difficult to look a business owner in the eye and say, we feel you must close your business for the good of the community. And it does have a disproportionate impact on those businesses that are forced to close. I get questions all the time about, well, you want to close restaurants, but you're more exposed and you're just as exposed in a grocery store or a gas station. Why are they allowed to remain open? And what's happened is in part of these emergency declarations, there have been declared critical infrastructures, which are grocery stores, which are gas stations, that in order for people to be able to get food and get gasoline in their cars, these businesses were allowed to remain open. And of course, on a municipal level, we can't override the ruling of the state. But again, the critical thing is for each individual to do everything that they possibly can to distance themselves, to practice the guidelines of the CDC, and to prevent the spread of this virus. And it's up to us, each of us as an individual, to do everything that we can.
And so, just to echo on what both of y'all have said, I have said in response to a lot of people, how did you come up with this particular list, if you will? And what I have said is, you start with the governor's order, okay? The governor's executive order, which following the CDC guidelines, said that all businesses, 100% businesses as well as churches, nonprofits, charities, everybody has to follow the governor's order, which is if you have more than 10 people, you have to maintain the 6-foot social distance. That's across the board of application. But then the governor let the local governments decide where to fill in the gaps. And so what GMA did in consultation with cities from across the state is GMA tried to identify what are those businesses that can't maintain the 6-foot separation, or that by definition are going to be bringing people close together and in a close area. And so that's how that list came to be. This is not something that any of the four of us created. This was a list that was adapted from input from across the state, which said that, okay, if you're going to go to a barber shop, you're going to not be able to maintain 6-foot social distance. It's impossible to do at a barber shop. If you're going to a gym or a fitness center, you may be able to stay 6 feet away from people, but you're going to be using the same equipment and you're going to be handling the same weights and machines and so forth. So basically what GMA did is rather than ban all businesses and then create exceptions, which would be sort of what I would call a shotgun approach, GMA recommended more of a rifle approach. Identify particular businesses that might be more susceptible, if you would, to spread, and ask them to close to try and reduce the spread for now. And obviously, as we all know, we've talked about the hot spots around the state, and one of those is Carrollton, and we know that comes from a restaurant in Carrollton where there was one big outbreak. So we know that in-service dining is a particular hot spot. I've made the analogy, I said, compare a restaurant where you go and sit for an hour and you're using the same plates and you're sharing the same tables and so forth, to going to the grocery store, where when you walk through the grocery store, you only touch the things that you're putting in your buggy. You're not touching everything in the store, and you can avoid coming within 6 feet of one another. So there is a distinction between a grocery store and a restaurant, and there's not a black and white rule here. The cities and counties are trying to do the best they can to approximate what will help reduce the spread without shutting down the entire economy. And so that's the attitude that GMA took. That's the attitude that LaGrange City Council took. And I'd be curious if any of y'all would like to add to those comments.
Well, Jim, I'd like to make a comment. Yesterday, I had a conversation with one of our citizens, and they were complimenting one of our local grocery stores about they noticed that from the moment they walked in, that employees were wiping the cart handles down. They had employees directing it, what can I help you find to help them move through the store easier. And they said, I went and got a carton of ice cream out of the cooler, and as I turned around, looked back, one of the employees ran up there and wiped the handle down. Then I heard of another grocery store that was limiting, it was like one-way traffic down the aisles to keep people from being close inside those aisles. So, I think that there's ways for us as Americans to adapt. It's a challenging, of course, but if businesses will be responsible and citizens will be responsible, then it will certainly help us hold down the spread of this virus.
So we've got some Facebook comments coming in, and I want to share a couple of questions that have already been answered, I think, on Facebook comments. One was what's going on with the school system, and the answer is that they have an email. They have an email at info@troop.org, and so anyone can contact the school system to find out more particulars. We know that Governor Kemp has extended the school closing date, but if you want specific questions about the school system, the email address is info@troop.org. And then another question was about being medically fragile or perhaps elderly, about going to the grocery store, and so I wanted to just announce that Kroger in LaGrange has a senior citizen hour of 7 to 8 a.m. Publix has a 7 to 8 a.m. on Tuesday and Wednesday mornings, and Dollar General has the first hour of business every day. Those are reserved for elderly and medically fragile. Do any of y'all have any other announcements about grocery stores or stores in your communities, for particularly how they're addressing the elderly and the medically fragile? Okay. So to go into some of the other questions, one question that has been asked is, can plants have more than 10 people? And the answer is yes, because a business is not considered a gathering, but a business is required to follow the governor's order, which is if you have more than 10 people, they have to be able to maintain 6-foot separation. The governor has given authority to enforce that to the Department of Public Health. And so if anybody has any concerns about that, they can get more guidance from the Department of Public Health. But it raises a bigger question that we get asked all the time is, what about the plants? And Steve, I'd start with you because Kia obviously has announced a voluntary closure for 2 weeks. You have the biggest plants, I think, in the community. But I think it's a question for all of us is, what are your thoughts long term about the viability of the manufacturing plants?
Well, we do know that Kia has been taking the temperature of all the employees all week long as they go into the plants, that they'll be shutting down today. Today's the last day for the next 2 weeks, and hopefully not longer, but it could be longer. So, we need this whole county needs our plants back up and running as soon as possible, as soon as it's safe for us to have them back running. So let's hope and pray that happens sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I saw the stat came out yesterday of record unemployment claims. Record. I think it literally broke the historic record of the number of unemployment claims nationwide. And certainly, if the plants close down, we're going to have a lot of people unemployed and a lot of people going without wages, and that's going to create a whole nother host of issues. So it is critical that we can get the plants back running as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
Jim, I'm sure. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
I just want to add the most important thing is we have to let the science lead our way. We can't let emotions rule our judgments. We can't let emotions make our judgments for us. We have to listen to the people that are professionally competent in these areas and follow their guidelines. And as painful as it is, that is the quickest way to get past this. It isn't going to be an emotional response. It's going to be to follow the science.
Patrick?
Jim, I think one of the other issues that we've heard a lot about is, well, how am I going to report someone if I see them violating the governor's order or one of our ordinances? And so we had a big discussion here at the county yesterday about that. So let me say to the citizens, first off, we cannot overwhelm 911 with calls, citizens calling and saying, I think so-and-so is violating. We've got to remember that 911 is still in the business of taking care of other emergencies also. So we know that there is a public website that the state of Georgia has for public health that people can go in and send an email of something they see that's a potential violation. We on the county side, and I think it's already been mentioned, it's not our intent to send our law enforcement out to give people tickets for seeing them violate. It is our position that our law enforcement and other personnel will approach someone and let them know. We're even looking at a handout that can be given to those people explaining the ordinance and then making the recommendation that they move on. Now, if they're not going to comply, then there is the possibility that the state of Georgia will come in, the Department of Public Health, and they can shut a business down. They have the enforcement powers to do that. So we're also looking right now at taking some of our employees that's not actively working due to some of our departments modifying their operations. We can take those employees to man the phones to try to accept those calls, screen those calls, and get them to the right place. So I know that yesterday I had 3 calls from people telling me about what they thought businesses were doing wrong. And so we know that each of our community will get a lot of calls and a lot of questions. And so, again, let me stress to the citizens, please don't call 911 with these calls. Let's try to get them appropriately handled. And hopefully later today, we'll be able to put out a phone number for the county or Department of Public Health, giving that information. But we also got to remember public health can't be overrun. I mean, they are in the trenches right now. I was found out last night some of the public health employees were being sent to other counties that are in much worse shape than we are right this minute to try to help them within our public health district. So we can't bombard our health department, but we certainly want citizens to feel free to report situations that they see.
Okay. And so, Steve, did you have something to add on that, on enforcement?
If in West Point, if anybody wants to call City Hall, they can call us at 706-645-2226 to report any violations.
And Bill, do you have a number for people to call in Hogansville?
Yeah, again, they should call City Hall, 706-637-8629, and that's the appropriate way to handle someone that feels that someone is violating the order, rather than calling 911 or the police department. That would not be the appropriate way to do it.
And just for LaGrange, the number would be 706-883-2000, which is the number for the city of LaGrange main number you can contact. But we are also working on a website that hopefully will be up today, where someone can go on our website and fill out a very brief form explaining the issue and submit it, and that will generate an email that will go to all of the various responsible staff persons who can respond. We've gotten several questions from Facebook viewers about enforcement, and y'all have talked about if you see a violation and how to report it. One of the common questions that we've been getting is about gatherings, and people who are seeing gatherings in public places, particularly people who are seeing gatherings in our parks. And I think, as we know, all of our parks are closed to activities. We have allowed, obviously, people to continue walking on the thread, sort of like as a sidewalk, if you will, but that all of the activities at the playgrounds and tennis courts and basketball courts are closed at this point. What are y'all doing in your communities? And Chairman, you as Chairman of the county, having Parks and Rec authority under the county, what are any of y'all doing to address gatherings in parks in particular?
Oh, okay. Well, we did take some action last week to unfortunately shut down most of our public parks. As the mayor said, in LaGrange, the thread is still open. I assume, Bill, that you've got a walking trail there.
We do.
In Hogansville. Bill, you've got, Steve, you have something along the river there in West Point. But, it was painful to shut down our senior center. But again, in the early days, we felt like that was going to be the target group or most fragile. And so we took some immediate action. Then we began to shut down like our tennis courts. We've had several comments of some of our basketball courts. And as that's been pointed out of one of those activities that really is not good because there's physical contact and people passing the same ball back and forth, dribbling it, shooting it. So we're taking action to make sure that all of our basketball courts, that the goals will probably be removed. Because I rode through one of the parks yesterday and there was a group of young men out there playing basketball. And so you look right across the street and there's another facility that's shut down. And so, we must take the appropriate action that we think is in the best interest of our entire community. So you will see the public parks, senior center, and other venues shut down.
Bill, Steve, would y'all like to speak to the parks in your communities?
We had a conversation with Parks and Rec yesterday, and we asked them to take down the hoops in our community basketball courts as a way of discouraging gathering at the basketball courts.
We're going to enforce the no more than 10, even in a public place, no more than 10 in a group. But I'd encourage everybody to think about it. I think that 10 number would be maybe a large family or an extended family. I don't even recommend when you see a group and you know that no one's related and it's 10 people, you've got to think about when you're getting together in that group, who you're potentially taking that virus back home to. And that's the reason why we're doing this is we want to keep people in as small a group as possible. I try to stick to just people that I've been around for the last week. I'm not putting new people in my group. Just like we're not meeting together today. I didn't want to come to LaGrange and be around a bunch of people that I'm not ordinarily around. So that's why we're doing these things, to keep us in as small a group as possible and not potentially transmit this disease, carry it on to other people. So just be smart about this, I think is the main thing we need to think about. And we're going to enforce the no more than 10 to answer that question. It's a beautiful day today. We need to be outside. You need that 88-degree air in your lungs. But keep it small. Keep the group small.
Let me throw out a couple of, if you will, fast questions. Maybe short answers, but to anybody who'd like to respond. These are from some of our Facebook viewers. Why isn't there a limit to the number of people in grocery stores?
Well, I'll jump on that one real quick. I'm in the senior care business. And one of the very first things that we did was started screening visitors into the building. The next thing we did was we just shut the building down. No families, no vendors to come in our building. I would have loved to have done that with some of our bigger stores, but I also realized the challenge for those big stores that if you tell one of the big box stores, a grocery store or a retail type store, you can only have 20 customers in your store at the time. I'm not even sure that it's feasible for them to do that. Then you say, well, we're going to do it. You must close at 8 o'clock at night. Well, that probably just compacts all the customers into a shorter period of time of the day. So that would seem counterproductive. So, we're at the courthouse. We are limiting 15 people in the courthouse at a time, and we are screening those people. So we are in the courthouse limiting those people, but it's much easier for us to do that at the county administration building. So that's my answer.
Well, and I do think it's worth repeating that even the grocery stores, even though there's no limit on the number of people, they have to maintain that 6-foot separation under the governor's order, and under our ordinance, they have to post signage to that effect. So there is a limitation, but it's based on the spacing as opposed to the total number. Let me ask this question from a Facebook viewer. Why are people at City Hall and at the courthouse still working? To anybody.
Okay, I'll jump on that one first, Mr. Mayor. Really, we've not had any really support out of the state government for shutting down the courthouse or the county administration building. So there are a lot of important functions that go on in the courthouse, and take, for example, restraining orders. There's emergency orders that must be signed. So we felt like that the best way for us to handle that was to limit the number of people. Some of the departments have altered their way of operation. I was leaving the courthouse one afternoon, and a lady was standing at the door waiting on a car tack, and it had been left at the front desk, and I stepped back and handed it to her at 5:30 in the afternoon. I mean, she got what she needed from the courthouse that day. And so I feel like by screening the visitors to the building, limiting, then we are reducing our exposure greatly. But again, there are services that need to be conducted at the courthouse, real estate transactions and other things. So we've taken steps, guidance from our local health officials of how to best protect our employees and the citizens that need to come do business.
From the perspective of Hogansville, LaGrange and West Point and Hogansville also happen to be the utility providers for our citizens, both electric and gas. And these are essential functions that have to go on. Coming in here this morning for this event, I ran across, stayed 6 feet from, but ran across our meter readers who are out there reading meters. And these are functions that have to go on. I mean, we have to provide water and to our residents. We have to provide electric, and we have to provide gas, so that we're asking people to shelter in place, and therefore we have to provide these essential services to our citizens. And while I'm on the subject, I'll tell you that um, our employees have been just as an amazing group of individuals who, in spite of the threat of this virus, come to work every day, perform their functions as healthy as they possibly can, maintaining their distances and adhering to all the CDC guidelines, but yet they expose themselves to this virus by coming to work every day and providing these essential services to our citizens. And boy, do we owe them a great deal of thanks.
And we will, if this situation continues to escalate, we will look at limiting the number of staff here in City Hall, potentially working them in shifts, and just keeping the numbers down and reducing the numbers of people that we have to have here. We've not gone to that yet, but we're looking at it. We have a plan in place that we will be sending people home if this situation gets worse.
Just an announcement for those who are watching us. There are some Facebook issues that are going on. I think in this strange new world that we're living into, Facebook Live video feeds have become one of the most popular ways of communicating with people, and we've been taking advantage of that locally. But it obviously can and sometimes overwhelm Facebook, and I think Facebook is having to, if you will, throttle down some of their feeds to cover their own internal issues. The feed on our website, which is lgtv.org/home/LaGrange TV, is live, is hot, is going full speed ahead. The Facebook feed is temporarily being interrupted, but what will happen is once we conclude this broadcast in just a few minutes, the full hour-long video will be populated on the Facebook page, and you can go back and watch it in its entirety. And at that point, it shouldn't be throttled down. A couple of questions here from people on Facebook, though, that any of you can respond to are about vape shops. Are vape shops affected by any of these ordinances? Are daycares affected by any of these ordinances? And then is there any possibility of modifying the ordinance as it relates to hair salons and barber shops to allow them to just serve one customer at a time? So those three questions: vape shops, daycares, and hair salons. And whoever wants to go first.
I'll take vape shops for 100. No, vape shops are not are able to stay in business as long as they practice the 6-foot rule. And I won't put the other two mayors on the spot for a moment. I saw a story on the news last night of the First Baptist Church of Woodstock, Georgia, that has come up with a way to continue to operate their daycare center. And I know that over a week ago that the director of WellStart here in LaGrange, Mr. Foss, said that one of their great needs was for daycare for the workers there at the hospital. And I think the hospital has given an additional stipend to their employees to try to help offset daycare. But certainly a lot of those workers have children that are school age, and they were caught with the schools having to close. And so I know of one group right now that's trying to come up with a creative way here in LaGrange and Troup County to offer childcare if they can work through the operational issues. So it is a challenge for childcare because it's hard to practice 6-foot rule with small children. And I know the beauty and barber shops. Listen, I'm dying for my person to get back to her shop. I need a haircut bad. But I think, again, it's one of those an occupation that's very, very hard to not get within 6 feet of your customer. And I know that, well, why can't I just go and cut them at my house? Well, I think one of the things there is there's a constant contact with someone. So, in one of the situations that we've had in LaGrange involved a beauty shop. And so they come in contact with a lot of people. So, I'm waiting for my ability to go get a haircut.
Do either of the mayors want to comment on those specifics?
There are some essential services like daycare that and again, especially for the people in the healthcare community that are serving us. I don't know how we eliminate that service. As far as hair salons, again, this is one of those situations where the effect of this virus disproportionately falls on certain individuals, and certainly operators of beauty salons and hair and barbershops is one of those groups. And I don't know what you do about it. I mean, I just don't know. I think we have to wait this virus out, and maybe the barbers in the beauty salons double their price when you come back for. You have to go in for an estimate rather than for a haircut. But we just have to. We have to defeat this virus, and the way to defeat it is not to come in contact with other people. That's just common sense.
Steve, anything to add? Did we lose Steve? Oh, we lost Mayor Trammell, so we're going to try to get him back. We've gotten a couple of questions about gatherings, and particularly as that relates to churches. And so, when people ask me about churches, and I've gotten a little bit of criticism on Facebook for calling upon our churches to go to online or virtual services as opposed to gatherings. But I think this is important for people to know. The biggest single outbreak in Georgia that is related, that has overwhelmed a community is happening down in Albany. And Albany is literally overwhelmed. Albany is disproportionately high in outbreaks of COVID-19. And almost all of that outbreak can be traced to a funeral service. So a church gathering, a funeral service where one infected person infected dozens, and it spread throughout that community. And Phoebe Putney Hospital is in disaster mode in Albany. If you go up to Cartersville, Cartersville is a town about the size of LaGrange, and yet they have 80 cases or so in Bartow County, whereas we have 10. And most of those early cases can be traced to one church in Bartow County where there was a gathering. Just last night on Facebook, I saw one church in Lynette was on Facebook talking about 10 cases from one church in Lynette. And this is serious business. And when you bring people together in a gathering like that, and you don't know who might have been exposed, most of the people who show up may not have realized they've been exposed. But if you show up in a gathering like that, you can really infect a lot of people. And so the city has called for no gatherings of more than 10 people. That's all 3 cities and the county. The governor's rule of 6-foot separation applies to nonprofits, to churches, to organizations. Now, I also understand that, I don't think anybody's going to go out there and shut down a church service, because of First Amendment concerns and some of that. But I appeal once again to all the people in LaGrange to not have church gatherings, because those church gatherings have been proven in communities around the state to be a source of infection, to be a source of community spread. So I appeal to you. Churches are called upon. The second commandment is to love our neighbor as ourselves, and the way we show love for our neighbors is by not infecting them and not exposing them. So that's my answer on churches. And I know it's a difficult subject, and I know it's a hot button issue for lots of people, but I'm going to turn to y'all and give y'all an opportunity to agree or disagree with me.
Well, I'll agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I know that about 2 weeks ago, I was talking to our pastor on a Friday when this was beginning to break. And I said, I'm going to give you my 2 cents worth. You're going to get criticized greatly for calling off church, but we need to do that. And sure enough, there was some criticism, but I think time has proven that it was a very wise decision. And it makes you feel good as a Christian to look around, and churches have adapted. I've seen the drive-in churches. I've seen church members now engaged in looking for opportunities to serve the citizens. So there's still a way to have a ministry in our community through our churches. But as with funerals, for example, funerals. I watched the funeral of a man back home the other day that was filmed Facebook Live in the cemetery. And I've known of a few. We've had some very good people within our community that have passed away recently, and they're unable to have their funeral service. So I know that there's loved ones and there's families that's hurting right now, but this is, again, a most challenging time. And if you want to, again, practice love for your neighbor, you're going to think very hard about being around other individuals at this time.
God doesn't care where we get down on our knees. If you go and sit in a room with 100 other people, you're stupid. You gotta stop. And the problem is that you will then take that infection and spread it to everybody else in the community. That is not God's plan. And I don't profess to be a minister, but I feel confident in saying that is not God's plan.
Steve, anything you want to add? Or you good? You good?
I'm not a minister, but I play one on Facebook. No, I was on a live feed this week with a couple of people here in West Point, and just begging the churches not to have services, not at this time. It's not appropriate. It's just not what we need to be doing right now. Get together by video, by phone. Pastors, you have a responsibility. Shepherd your flock a new way. So that's all I have to say about that.
Well said. Let me ask a couple of questions that you may or may not have answers for, because it may be a little bit beyond our scope. But do any of you know about how any self-employed businesses could get financial help? Any references or referrals?
I've been in contact. Go ahead, Patrick.
Well, I'll say one of the conference calls we were in yesterday, evidently there's going to be some programs through SBA pushed out to the community, and what was recommended yesterday is to contact your local bank. So I would say that we have several good local community banks here, or regional banks in Troup County, and so they were encouraging everyone to contact their bank to see if they would be participating in those programs.
Steve, you want to add?
Yeah, I've heard that one too, and there will be some. All businesses are going to have some unemployment, some responsibilities now for helping their employees with filing for unemployment. It used to be over. I forget the limit now. If you were over 50 employees, you had the mandate to do that, but now it's basically any employer is going to have to provide some assistance, and I think that's going to not start till after April 1st. Is what the word I'm getting from my CPA. And I believe we're waiting on something from Congress in this last round of spending. There's something in that, too, that's going to affect this. So I know April 1st is the date, and something they're doing up in Washington is also going to have an effect on this. So looks like all the employers are going to have something to do, regardless of whether you have 5, 10, 2, 5, 10, or 50 employees. We're going to have to do something. So.
Okay. Another question from Facebook is, what's going to happen if our local hospital gets overwhelmed? Is there a backup plan? Do any of y'all have a thought on that?
We need Coleman Foss here for that.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, let me speak to that one because, as I mentioned earlier, I have two that are involved in the front line, and one of them is an employee of WellStar and in the emergency room. And so, again, I'm greatly concerned about overwhelming the resources. Those nurses and doctors are overwhelmed. And it's not only at WellStar, but you have several urgent care clinics here in LaGrange. Emory's here. There's first responders. There's concern with them. There's concerns with the ambulance drivers. So in the medical world, there's a lot of people worried about this. I do know that the hospital has plans, and I know they've been looking at options. we probably all aware that they set up a tent to pre-screen people, to kind of keep the people that are not experiencing those symptoms of the virus from those people that might be having an internal issue, whatever. So I do know that the hospital has contingency plans, and I know that the word yesterday was that our director was feeling good about where we were. But we can't let our guard down because, as Mayor Jim said just a few moments ago, Carrollton, 40 miles north of us, Tanner is experiencing lots of problems. I understand Auburn is like the number 3 spot in the state of Alabama. So we have to be very, very careful. As mentioned on the news last night by the mayor of Atlanta, that Grady was already in issues because of the flood, the issues they had earlier in the year. So I feel confident right now where we are, but certainly it could change at a moment's notice.
This is maybe a question for Bill and Steve, and I can answer it as well from the city. But there have been questions on Facebook about services, and Bill alluded to earlier gas and electricity. Obviously, we also provide water and sewer and at least in this case of LaGrange, sanitation services. So are there any interruptions in any of those services expected? And I can tell you that from LaGrange's perspective, no. We are still, obviously, water plant's running, sewer plant's running, electric gas is still flowing, and we are still running our residential sanitation and recycling. Now, obviously, these things could be affected at some point if the shutdown became more significant, but particularly on the sanitation side, obviously the utilities are going to continue, I think, is essential, but we have deemed that residential sanitation is an essential service. We will not stop the residential sanitation pickup. We might at some point interrupt recycling and trash, limbs, debris collection, lawn collection, but we have not stopped that yet. That's just, that might happen in the future. I'm not promising that it wouldn't, but we have deemed that sanitation pickup needs to continue unaffected for now. Bill, Steve, do y'all want to speak to any of that?
And another service you provide there is a fine cable TV station, and you need to keep that up and running too. So.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Anything, Bill?
I'll echo what you said, Mr. Mayor. We have no plans to cut back any services that the city currently provides. We don't know what the future will bring. We can't predict that with certainty, but we can say that we have no plans to eliminate or curtail or cut back any of the services that the city currently provides.
Okay.
West Point the same way. We're going to keep doing what we do best, and that's providing good service to our citizens.
So
same here on the county.
Great. So one question was asked about the signage requirement, that I think all 4 of us included that signage requirement for businesses, and was where could they get like a model sign? And I will tell you that we actually have posted the language on our coronavirus website. So you can download the posters on coronavirus.lagrangega.org, or you can email Katie Van Schuer with our city staff, kvanschhoor@lagrangega.org, and we can get you the language that you would need and the poster that you would need for that signage. And I'm sure that y'all can provide those links as well on the other, for businesses in the other communities.
Jim, I'd like to mention one other thing real quick. It would appear at this time that the state is leaning towards doing absentee ballots for voting. Now, I saw this morning on the news that there's been some proposal to maybe move elections back. But let me assure everyone that did early voting, your votes are locked up, your ballots are locked up, safe and secure. And at the time at which the final decision is made about voting, then we will let the citizens know. But we do know that we have upcoming local elections. We have a presidential primary, but we are working very hard to figure out how exactly that process is going to look.
Okay, and then another question that somebody submitted was about the beer and wine purchases, and I think I'm correct in saying that all 4 of our communities have authorized our restaurants that are otherwise licensed. If they have a beer and wine license already for the restaurant, they can allow unopened bottles of beer and wine to be sold along with the food that they are selling at the restaurant. That's the rule in LaGrange, and I'm thinking that's right everywhere, but do y'all want to confirm that? Or
It is in West Point.
That's correct.
We will take that action this morning. That is one of the items that we're going to consider this morning.
Okay, okay, that's right, because you didn't close the in-room
Right.
dining, so you didn't adopt that section.
We plan the council. The will of the council right now is to allow unopened containers to be sold by businesses that have a beer and wine license if they close their dine-in services. If they choose to remain open, they can't do it.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, well, we've gone about an hour, and I know we had some technical issues with audio at the very beginning, and I apologize for that. I know we had some issues with Facebook, and that might have dropped off. I would like to mention that there is a Georgia COVID-19 hotline, and that hotline number is 844-442-2681. And I also would mention that the CDC has developed some coronavirus self-checks, and LaGrange has linked that on our website. So if you, again, we have a website up, coronavirus.lagrangega.org, and we have lots of resources. This video will be posted up there. We have other videos posted up there, but we have links to CDC, public health, lots of other guidance out there for people who have questions about this. Any closing comments that any of y'all would like to make? We'll just go around the wheel. Start with Bill.
Yes, I'd like to make a closing comment. Those of you that know me know that I served in the Navy, and one of the things I learned in the Navy was some colorful language, language that I can't use on this broadcast today. So what I'd like you, everybody that's listening, to do is to insert their own expletive where they feel it's appropriate. We face a crisis. We have to act individually, and we have to act responsibly. If you do not, you will prolong this crisis, make it worse, and cause people to suffer. I cannot urge the people that are listening and all our citizens strongly enough, with the strongest possible terms, stop doing these foolish things, and let's get together and work together as a community.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Steve?
Well, I don't have any expletives to share, but I do want to thank my council that we've been hard at work getting these things passed for our city, and I'm thankful the way they've worked together to get that done. And just want our citizens in the county to know that the 4 of us, we normally get together once a month and have lunch and discuss what's going on in the counties and the cities. And first time we've done this by video, guys, but hopefully we'll be back together soon, and this will be over. So just want everybody to know that we're working hard on this and looking out for what's best for our communities and county. So thank you.
Last time we got together, we were at Ash in downtown West Point and had a wonderful lunch there, and look forward to being able to do that again, repeat it very soon. But thank you, Steve. Patrick?
First off, again, Steve, please tell your council on behalf of True County government, thank you for doing the right thing. So thank you very much for that. Second thing, it looks like it's going to be a beautiful weekend in True County. So let me encourage everyone to get out, enjoy the outdoors, keep your distance, but enjoy it. Take a Sunday afternoon ride. And don't forget to reach out to someone that's a loved one. There's a lot of people hurting right now. As I said, y'all know I'm in the senior care business, and it pains me right now to see families not to be able to connect with their senior adults, and their senior adults are missing their contact from their children or their other loved one. So there's a lot of people hurting across this community, but each of us have the opportunity to practice personal responsibility, and we should all be blessed to have someone that we care about and reach out to them. So have a great weekend, and hopefully we'll see y'all again next week.
Well, gentlemen, thank you. Thank all three of you for joining me this morning on this video conference and broadcast. I think this has been very good and helpful information. And, just to reiterate what's been said, I mean, the four of us work closely together, and I think we are a very fortunate community that we have the leadership of all three of our cities in our county, but also the leadership of our institutions working closely together. We focus today on just the three cities in the county because of the various nuance in our ordinances that were adopted this week. But we will continue doing these virtual roundtables, continuing to include the school system, the hospital, District 4 Public Health, and others, because this is a crisis that requires our community to pull together, to work together, and to continue to do the right thing, to follow the best practices and the best guidance that we can. Appreciate all of you who joined us today and who will be watching us. Apologize for the technical issues we've had, but I think this video will be up and on our websites and on our Facebook page and YouTube, and I hope you will take the time to listen in and look for guidance, and certainly contact any of the four of us if you have follow-up questions. Thank y'all, and have a great weekend.